Hello, I'm Billy Hoffman. Thank you for joining us today for our Black Friday Cyber Monday retrospective. I'm going to be digging into some of the most popular brands and see how their sites fared during this intense holiday shopping season. Just a note, all the data that I collected and analyzed today, I got via the Rigor Web Performance platform. In this video, I'm going to be looking at Forever 21. We're going to see how they handled an outage on Black Friday and what the users would have experienced during that outage. Then we'll dive into some advice about how to configure your CDN and the origin to better handle peak traffic in the future. So this is a graph of Forever 21, and we can see that Forever 21 had some outages. Now, in this case, I'm looking at a category page on Forever 21 from mobile, and we can see actually two clusters of when they had some outages. Now, one of the things that Rigor does nicely is whenever there's a failure, we do an immediate retry to see whether it was a false positive or not, and then we do another one that we back off a little bit. So these were two periods of sustained outages, and we can see that that not only affected the mobile site, but it also affected the desktop site as well. Now, these were on over the weekend, which is still an important shopping period. Now, they had the outages. Now, when you have an outage, we've seen in a previous video how some companies like New York and Company actually were able to flip the site into maintenance mode and actually show a maintenance page helping the user. That's a great experience. Let's see how Forever 21 handled this. So if I actually click on one of these outages, this is the result of one of the outages. And we can actually see that when you're accessing it, it's just returning a straight up 404, not getting anything. And this is what the screenshot looked like. The resource that you're looking for has been removed, the name has changed, or is temporarily unavailable. And it's just a straight 404. And we can tell that the whole site is having a problem because not only are we getting a 404 on this base page, but the browser always, if it's not given a fave icon, will proactively fetch one. And that also is returning a 404. So this site is pretty consistently out and down. And this is not a great experience to show them this sort of stock error message. Now, what is interesting is that Forever 21 does do some pretty cool things. So we can see when the site comes back up, there is a big spike in the time to first byte. So let's actually click into that. We saw this also happened with New York and Company. When you're bringing a site back up, this is why you need to plan for this and actually do drills where you take the site down and bring it up and see what's involved. Everything's cold. The caches are cold. The CDN is cold. Your Redis caches or anything like that, your Memcache, your Redis queues, everything is cold. So if we come in here and actually look, we can look at some helpful headers and see that with these server timing headers, they had a CDN miss. That's because they just brought the site back up from this outage. So they brought it back up and they're experiencing very slow time to first byte. That's because the backend is having to be brought back up. It's missing on the CDN. We can see that it spent very little time on the edge because the edge is just passing it right back to origin. And we can see origin itself is taking 42 seconds to respond. And so that's the back end. It's trying to go and pull, the dynamic information for this particular blouse page. It's trying to actually build this view and then show sort of the this fun little popover that they have. So we can see that it takes a while to bring your application back up once it goes down. Now, what are some good things that Forever 21 is doing? Well, if we actually look at this, I'm going to pop over to here. So this is actually a run from after it's come back up. And we can see that, here's November 30th. So we're talking out on this long tail of things. It's actually this run right here. When we come back, we can see that it still took a little while for the site to come back up. So we're still experiencing that slow backend, and we can see here that we're still missing at the edge, but the server is now responding in about 1.5 seconds, almost 2 seconds, which is great. But there's a couple of things that we see that they're doing well. So first of all, I'm accessing forever21.com/US shop, but of course, Rigor allows you to test from multiple locations. I actually ran this from Montreal. And so one of the things that the very first thing that they do is is they're going to do a redirect back to the /CA. So they're sending me to the Canadian site. Now, here's what they're doing that's smart. If you click into here, notice who's doing this redirect for me. It's Akamai Ghost. So they're actually doing geo redirects to the appropriate store for that region or country at the edge. That's super, super smart. There's no reason to go all the way back to origin to say, wait a minute, this is somebody who's in London that's trying to access the US site. Let's redirect them. You can do that at the edge. They are doing it at the edge. And also notice that Akamai does this, other CDNs does this. They actually are caching that redirect at the edge. So there's no reason for it to go to the origin. That's pretty awesome. That's a great use of the power of a CDN. Here's where they're not doing the smartest idea, which is if we look at the base HTML page, first of all, it's about a meg. That is not small of HTML. But the other thing you'll notice is that it's missing the CDN. It's going to the edge. But look at this. There's no caching headers. Now, this is an e-commerce site. If I have something logged into the shopping cart or something like that, maybe there's something custom about this page. But Rigor, when we test a site, we're coming in with an empty cache. We're not logged into the site. We're literally just wanting to shop for, a really killer blouse that's going to make us look awesome. So we want to see that killer blouse, and it's not caching it. Now, this blouse can probably be shown, this product page can probably be shown to lots of different people. But what Forever 21 is doing is saying, no, Edge, not only browser, but also the Edge, you are not allowed to have a cached copy of this. They could be a little bit smarter. They could use some cache control headers and maybe store this for a minute. Or they could do a cache control, store it, and use a vary header to say, look, if they're logged in, and let's vary on their login cookie or vary on a cookie that says whether there's stuff in the shopping cart. If there's nothing in the shopping cart, which is probably true for the majority of visitors that first visit this blouse page, you can just give them the cached page and cache that at the edge. And that would shave 2 seconds off the load time. But not only would it save 2 seconds off the load time, remember, this is in the critical rendering path. This is on the base page. So this entire waterfall shifts left by 2.7 seconds, which would be amazing. So Forever 21 is doing some great stuff with the CDN. They're caching geo redirects. They had an outage. They did not have a maintenance page, so that wasn't great. But they are doing smart things with the edge, and there's some improvements they could make on how to actually cache these base HTML pages so that when they do have to bring their site back up, and it does take a long time for it to come back up, they can have a cached copy of that blouse HTML page that's not really personalized. It could be served from the edge, and they'd probably see a lot more conversions, and they'd minimize the impact of that downtime that they had.